Hey, good evening, guys. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way, Yorkville. Happy Monday evening. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to talk about an interesting subject tonight. And I get this question a lot from people who reach out to me, email, social media, messages, like you name it. So the title of today is Help Me. I'm on Synthroid and I still don't feel well. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit about, hey, here's what truly can go wrong with thyroid. And it's more than just one issue. It's more than just one, two, or three hormones. And the other thing too, when it comes to thyroid, is that everybody puts so much importance on the thyroid. And here's one of the things I always say is hormones make you feel lousy, but they're not the reason why you're sick. And the thyroid is merely responding to other different things that are going on. I'll explain to you why here in just a second. And so make sure that you watch this, because I'll show you the actual testing that we use in order to test the thyroid. I'll go over with you all the different things that can actually cause you to have thyroid-like symptoms. And then I'll also go over with you as well actually a cool story, and this just happened last week, is someone who was able to go completely off of thyroid medication, which is really, really cool. We want to see that happen. That was fixed by her own lifestyle. So if you guys are on YouTube, if you're on Rumble, if you're on Facebook, hey, make sure that you say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. I always love to see where people are watching from, and also on Instagram as well. So before I go into the actual thyroid, I want to say something, and I mean this sincerely. All right. I get a lot of messages, dozens every single day. I try to respond to all of them. Sometimes I can't, so I apologize if I can't. I really do try, but I do only have so much time in my day, and I also have, only so much time that's dedicated to other things, like family and things like that. But I would probably say the two biggest questions that people ask me when they have a health related question. Here's the first one. The first question that they ask is what do I need to take for whatever condition, X condition? What supplement do I need to take? And I never answer that question. And the reason why is it isn't about a supplement, guys. As if we put so much power into a supplement. And really, in all honesty, supplements are really designed to do two things. They're either designed to restore sufficiency or to actually help adaptation. Okay. So when someone says, what do I need to take? It's like there's something that's a lot more powerful than a supplement that you need to take. And it's actually completely changing and revamping your whole entire lifestyle. Because there's something that's always going to be more powerful than a supplement, and it's always inflammation. It always is. But the other thing that people will say is what labs do you recommend for this? And the reason why, also maybe I always try to reframe that question is we try to get the labs, but then I'm like, okay, so you get the lab. Now what are you going to do with it? And so a lab doesn't matter if you don't know what to do with it. And so that's why, guys, I just always encourage you, please go to thewellnessway.com. Please find a provider who is closest to you. And if there isn't one closest to you, then one of the things I always tell people is, hey, go watch the inflammation webinar that we have. It's in the Linktree profile. And then watch that. There's a link at the end. And I really do want you to watch it because I want you to start thinking differently. And when you watch that, there's a link to be able to schedule an initial discovery call with me. But I always say, hey, if you can find one to go in person that's closest to you, then please absolutely do it. It's just way easier. And it's actually cheaper too, to be able to go see a provider, obviously in person. But the reason why I have this picture up here of a square peg trying to get fit into a round hole is because a lot of times if you are kind of at a standstill when it comes to your health, that's a lot of even what healthcare is trying to slam a square peg into a round hole. Or it's also when we're trying to change our lifestyle, but we haven't actually changed this up here. And that's why a lot of people say, well, that diet is not sustainable. And I said, it's not sustainable to who? Because even the smallest change is someone who hasn't changed their mindset is going to be difficult. And so once you actually start changing this up here, then sustainability usually isn't the question. And so a lot of people, and it may be you too, that's okay, but you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole And the reason is because you just haven't changed your perspective. You're asking the question, what supplements do I need to take? Or, hey, can I ask my doctor for that lab? I'm like, if your doctor wanted to get that lab, they probably would have gotten that lab. Well, should I go find a different doctor to get the same answer? So that's why sometimes you need to just really pull a 180 and just work with a Wellness Way doctor in order to just kind of cut out all of the unnecessary detours that you take, obviously, on your journey. So don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole. And if you're joining us too, guys, coming up on Thursday, July 20th, we have a lot of people registered for this in person. This is the inflammation. So I know that we have people who are watching from Oswego, Illinois right now, just up the road from us. If you're watching from the Chicagoland area, please, guys, go to the top of the page, and then you will see the inflammation in-person event on Eventbrite. Please register for it. Our next one is going to be just in a couple of days on July 20th, 6 o'clock sharp. This is an awesome experience in our office. I love in-person events and experiences because I have an opportunity to be able to connect with you, number one, and also you have a wonderful opportunity to take some herbs that are just wonderful sedatives and help to calm the stress response. So guys, if you want to work with the Wellness Way Yorkville, please go to that page, get registered for that event that's going to be coming up in just a couple of days. We do have some spots available but I know there's a lot of people that have been registered. We do have a limit as far as how many people that we can take on each event. And just like I just previously said, is that if you are not from the Chicagoland area, if you're in the contiguous United States, 48 states, continental United States, you can actually watch the inflammation webinar by actually going to the Linktree profile too, and you'll be able to either schedule the time that we have for that inflammation webinar, or you can actually, if you do have an hour, watch it on demand. If you do have an hour to be able to spare at that time, and you can watch it on demand. And there is a link at the end to be able to work with me remotely. But we always say, hey, if you can, go find a Wellness Way doctor that's closest to you. It's a lot easier to get what you need and order the testing and things if you are seeing them in person. Guys, I'm really excited about this too. Is coming up is we are kicking off our Man Up Challenge, and this is going to be in person on Saturday, July 22nd at 10 o'clock a.m. And I'm going to talk to men specifically on action steps that you can do in order to get your testosterone back. I actually just had a consult with a gentleman today that was his testosterone was at 150. Okay. Guys, when your testosterone is that low, then you become a great roommate. If you know what I mean. You're a great roommate, but you have lost everything that makes it enjoyable, basically, to be a man. And so at 150, and his number one symptom was fatigue, but he also had some other issues that were going on, including type 2 diabetes. So we gave him a plan on what he needs to do to start off in order to be able to get that up. And that goes even directly to the thyroid too, is that everyone wants to just dump hormones into their system. But I said, no, there's a reason why your hormones are adapting in this way. And you got to fix the reason why. Hormones, again, will make you feel lousy, but they're not the main reason why you're sick. So guys, if you are from the Chicagoland area, get registered for this event. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is my favorite event of the year, and I'm not lying when I say that. But Saturday, July 22nd at 10 o'clock a.m. So we're going to talk about what drives a testosterone down in a man, and then the action plan of what you can do in order to get that back up. And then we'll be inviting you to a 4-week mentorship with me in person on what you can do and some of the things that we're going to do, and also with some accountability. It's going to be really, really awesome. I really, really hope you can make it. And I really hope that you don't make a terrible excuse like I've seen a lot of men actually do. So there is not a better time in order to change your life, honestly. You can, though, if you are watching or your man, they can watch the webinar that we're going to be broadcasting on Thursday, Friday, and also on Saturday morning. So if you actually go to Linktree, and you'll be able to see the Man Up webinar. This is for men only. I, for some reason, had women get registered for it, and I don't know why, because this is from a man's perspective. And so you can get your man registered for that. It's got to come from him. You can't pester him to do it. But also we have a lot of people who have registered for one of those webinars. We'll give you an even opportunity that you can follow along remotely and online by joining our Facebook group. And be able to follow along with everything that we're going to do. It's just we won't see you in person, but we will see you virtually. So let's get in the meat and potatoes, shall we? We're going to talk about, help me, I'm on Synthroid and I don't feel well, okay? I'm going to give you a common scenario, and you may identify with this because it happens all the time. So you start to have some symptoms of fatigue, or you may notice some hair changes, some skin changes. You may notice that you just don't feel well. You may have noticed that, oh, I have some bloating. Maybe my bowels aren't moving the way that they're supposed to. Just things are off. And I'm particularly talking to women because women and thyroid issues are having a large majority of thyroid issues. So you just don't feel very well. You feel fatigued. Things just aren't right. So you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, let's just run some labs. And usually what they'll do is they'll run one lab in order to check the thyroid, which is actually not a thyroid hormone. It's a brain hormone. It's known as thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a pituitary hormone, not an actual thyroid hormone. And they may see that TSH is sky high. So it's very, very high, which means that there may or there may not be something happening within the actual thyroid. So based off of that one brain hormone, they come back and say, here's the reason why you may be having some fatigue. And the reason why is because you're having a thyroid issue. How do we know? Because we measured one hormone known as thyroid stimulating hormone. So we have the answer for you. Here's the answer, is to go on synthetic thyroid hormone known as Synthroid. So you take that and you say, hallelujah, I think this is the answer to all of my problems. And you start taking that, but nothing ever changes. You still don't feel well. And the number of women, especially who come into the office that are already on Synthroid and still don't feel well, and they show me their labs when it comes to their thyroid, and I start thumbing through their labs and I say, where's the rest of it? And they say, well, what are you talking about? They tested my thyroid. I'm like, no, they didn't test your thyroid. They tested a brain hormone. So where's the rest of the testing? And 99% of the time, I have to look at the patient and say, unfortunately, your labs are incomplete. And so here are a lot of women who are taking Synthroid, but they still don't feel well, but they still haven't given an answer as far as why. So one of the biggest things that I tell you, and this is why I hope that you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook or on Rumble, because this is actually the testing that we use in order to get an assessment of what's going on with the thyroid. So if you look at this, we're measuring thyroid stimulating hormone, T3, T4, free T3, free T4. We're looking at T3 uptake. We're looking at cortisol, thyroid binding globulin. We're also looking at anti-thyroid antibodies and anti-thyroglobulin antibodies. We're looking at thyroid peroxidase antibodies. We're looking at reverse T3, ferritin, which is your stored iron, vitamin D, DHEAS or sulfated DHEA, and also we're doing a metabolic panel and then also doing a CBC with a differential. So those are all of the things that we're saying, hey, at a basic level, here's what you actually need in order to be able to properly assess the thyroid. And many times we're running it in conjunction with a full hormone panel as well, because there's also one thing that can interfere with thyroid function, and that is your estradiol levels, which actually means that if you're on like an estrogen-based birth control, that can actually interfere with thyroid function, because estrogen can actually bind to thyroid binding globulin, which means that you have normal production, but the problem is you don't have the carrier protein in order to be able to transport it. So it's really not a thyroid issue as much as just a transport issue, meaning you can manufacture the hormone in the factory, but you just don't have enough of the buses or enough of the trucks in order to ship it out to the tissues where it is actually needed. So those are all of the different ones, but this is usually what people will ask me. And they'll say, well, if that's how you properly assess the thyroid, then why aren't doctors actually measuring? Why aren't they running labs like this? And the reason why is because the treatment of a thyroid issue has one solution, and that is taking thyroid hormone. So that is taking Synthroid, or maybe a little bit better is taking some kind of desiccated thyroid, like a pig glandular or something that may provide a little bit of T4, a little bit of T3. T1 actually and T2, But they actually don't because they're not really measuring beyond that. In fact, they may measure beyond just TSH. They may measure T4. They may measure T3, but very rarely are they actually measuring the number one reason why there's hypothyroidism, which is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an immune response to the thyroid. And no, your body is not attacking itself. It's not genetically programmed to do that. So people say, why? Why aren't they testing this properly? And the answer is because there is only one solution, and the one solution is a drug solution, is to take Synthroid. And so if your TSH is high, they're going to give you Synthroid in order to bring down that TSH level. And when TSH is normal, then that's what your thyroid doses actually is. And so, but the problem is that a lot of people come to me and say, I still don't feel well. Why is that? Because I thought my thyroid problem was actually fixed. No, they fixed a brain hormone, but there's a lot of other things that are actually going on. So the biggest thing that I can tell you is this: you weren't tested properly because there's only one solution. Solution is Synthroid. To test it deeper actually requires you to fix some things in regards to your lifestyle. And I don't know a lot of people or doctors sitting down and actually trying to fix their lifestyle with them. Reason why is I don't think that doctors don't want to do that. I think that they have quotas and they have things that they have to meet every single day. And I think that that is just not a very high reimbursable thing to actually sit down and counsel a patient in regards to nutrition. And now whether they know it or not, I don't know. I can't say that, but it's not very profitable to sit down for a half an hour and begin the process of helping them understand why they're having some kind of thyroid issue. It just doesn't pay very well, which actually lends the question, like people say, why don't you take insurance? And I'm like, because insurance actually rewards people to go on drugs. It doesn't reward based on clinical results. It just rewards on the more people you can see, and more people that you can put them on medications. So the biggest question, guys, that you need to ask in regards to your thyroid, because if you actually look at what's happening with the thyroid, there's a lot of different wheels that can spin when it comes to what's truly happening at your thyroid. So the questions that you have to ask is, hey, I'm on Synthroid, yet I still don't feel well, is number one, is this an autoimmune condition? Is this an autoimmune condition, which is the number one reason why people do, in fact, have Hashimoto's, which means that, does that mean that you need to be on Synthroid? Well, that just depends on how much destruction is actually taking place. So I looked at people and I said, I actually don't know if you'll be able to recover from this, because we don't know how much destruction is actually taking place or how long this has been going on, because we're just finally getting a test that is showing the presence of thyroid peroxidase and enzymes or antibodies to thyroid peroxidase, the enzyme. And so I don't know, maybe this has been going on for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I don't know. So I don't know how much destruction is in fact taking place. That's the number one reason in which the thyroid is getting destroyed. And there's a reason why the thyroid is getting destroyed, excuse me, and it's not the body attacking itself. One of the reasons is that it can be virally based, Epstein-Barr based chronic fatigue syndrome. So you can't have a reemergence of that. The thyroid is a pretty easy place for it to get infected with a virus, in which the immune system is just doing its job because it has to get rid of virally infected cells. Or there could be actually deficiencies in which there is oxidative damage due to the production of thyroxine within the actual thyroid cells, and the thyroid becomes damaged because there isn't enough antioxidant protection. Number one antioxidant to protect against damage to the thyroid is actually selenium. So if you are selenium deficient, you can actually cause damage to the cell, and the immune system is designed to clean up damaged cells as well. So you have to get to the reason as far as why that is happening. Destruction is the number one reason why. Number two, it may be just a production issue as well. So you may have it had damage to the factory, but when you're talking about a production issue, you may just not have the raw materials in order to produce the hormone. And so that's why when you look at from a constituent level, most people aren't deficient in tyrosine. It's a non-essential amino acid. Tyrosine is actually the number one source, is actually coming from dairy like milk and cheese, but it's non-essential, which means your body can actually take other amino acids to produce tyrosine. So it's not really due to a tyrosine deficiency per se, but it can be due to what you need in order to manufacture thyroid hormone. Because if you look at T3 and T4, T3 and T4, it just describes how many iodines are on that hormone. So you can have an iodine deficiency. A lot of times people run away from iodine saying how bad it is because iodine causes some kind of thyroid issues. And like, it's not the iodine, it's the lack of selenium that's causing the issues. So you can, I have seen occasionally some people with some iodine deficiencies that are taking place, but it doesn't happen all that often. The next thing too can be a conversion issue. So it's kind of like taking it, from the factory, you can deliver it, on the trucks, and then you have like it in packaging and it has to be unpackaged so that you can actually use it. And so that can be a conversion issue. And that can be in which you're seeing some discrepancy as far as T4 and T3. So they're usually not measuring that. So that hormone, T4, is inactive. It has to be activated into T3, which is how the cells actually use it. But primarily where a lot of conversion is taking place is in the liver, in the kidneys, muscle mass, even gastrointestinal system. But the liver is actually one of the largest converters of T4 into T3. So what if you do have some issues in which you have a decrease in liver function? And one of the biggest things in which you're going to have a decrease in liver function is actually going to be if you have a fatty liver, which now they're actually saying about 60%, I believe. I may be a little bit off on this for all the fact checkers, but I believe that it's 60% of adults have some level of changes, fatty infiltration within the liver. So if you do have some issues when it comes to the liver, which is why no one addresses the liver the way that we are addressing the liver. And the liver is doing approximately 100 different functions inside the body. And it's also, yes, burning fat as an energy source and turning it into energy and water, but it's also excreting your hormones. It's detoxing from your hormones, but it's also doing a large number of hormone conversion, especially into T4 and to T3. So that's why if you have any kind of muscle atrophy, that's why if you have any kind of chronic kidney disease, largely the number one reason why is because of elevated blood sugars and damage due to uncontrolled blood sugars. Or if you have any kind of fatty liver, that will affect your T4 levels, may be normal, which this is what happens in a lot of women because they get their TSH normalized, their T4 looks normal, but they still don't feel well. And the reason why is because it's not converting into its actual form. So this is a conversion issue. It can also be an interference issue, and this is where toxicity comes in as well. So there are certain toxins that can absolutely interfere with how a hormone is received. Mercury absolutely can play a role in that. But another thing too is some of these other halides. And if you go back to chemistry class, like in high school, which brings me just utter terror. But there are things that are very or chemically similar to iodine. So if you look in that same row that are similar in structure, not only do you have iodine, but you also have fluorine, you also have bromine, and you also have chlorine. So could you have some issues in which the thyroid is actually taking in those things that are similar versus iodine? So that's why you have things like brominated vegetable oil. You have bromine. I remember seeing a can of Mountain Dew that contained bromine. You have chlorine that can be in drinking water. You have chlorine that's going to be in pools. I think probably the biggest thing when we look at thyroid, especially as someone who is a competitive swimmer that spends a lot of time indoors in a hot, humid, chlorinated environment in which you're breathing it in, that can be an issue. But then also we're exposed to fluoride with toothpaste and things like that. So you also have some issues that can be taking place when it comes to toxicity. Another thing that I mentioned too is the whole idea of estrogen dominance too. So your estrogens can actually bind to the protein carrier, which means instead of carrying thyroid hormone, it's carrying estrogens as well, which means you need all of this thyroid hormone to get in the semi and get delivered to the tissues. But instead, estrogen's saying, I'm going to get on the bus instead. I'm going to get on this truck instead. And so you have a transport issue. It's not a production issue, autoimmune issue. It's a transport issue. And so that's why your estrogens can play a role. That's also why, if you're even taking an estrogen-based birth control, why this can absolutely devastate the thyroid. And I actually just saw it happen. I think this was about 2 weeks ago when I said, "Hey, when did you start to notice that you started having some problems with the thyroid?" And she's like, "Honestly, it wasn't that long after the doctor put me on birth control for a problem that I was having with my menstrual cycle," which goes down another whole path of saying, if there's problems with the menstrual cycle, merely just giving hormone is not correcting the problem. And in my opinion, it's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. So it can be a transport issue, and it can also be a stress issue. That's why you probably have heard of the whole idea of the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal thyroid axis, and how stress hormone plays a role in the body's ability to be able to take T4 and make it into active or inactivated. And that's why you see a marker that no one usually measures all that often, which is called reverse T3. Well, what will turn T4 into reverse T3 and not its active form? One of the biggest things is actually stress. That stress can be physical, it can be mental, or it can even be chemical. Like, for example, when people are really, really mentally stressed out, we've seen it. When people have severe sickness, we've seen it, like in cancer. When people are also on way too much hormone because the doctor didn't actually measure the whole entire panel, your body will inactivate it when you're taking too much Synthroid. I've even seen it, when people have a hyperthyroid, like Graves' disease, for example. And so I've also seen high reverse T3 when someone isn't eating enough as well, like in the case if they have an eating disorder in which they're anorexic. So look at guys at all these different things. It can be a destruction issue, production issue, conversion, interference. It can be a transport issue. So there's a lot of other things that can be going on versus just saying, measure one thing. If it's high, take a hormone until it comes down, and then all your problems should actually be going away. So I want to actually talk to you, and these are some actually journal articles that even discuss this as well. So this comes from about August 2022. And the title of the article is Non-Alcoholic Fatty Liver Disease and Hypothyroidism, What You Need to Know. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease represents one of the leading causes of chronic liver diseases globally, perhaps because of the drastic increase in prevalence around the world during the last 20 years, and it continues to grow. So it's a problem that continues to get worse. But if you read it a little bit further, one of the things they say, and this is coming from a meta-analysis, which is actually a very, very good to look at a number of studies. So from 2018, that involved 26 studies, almost 62,000 participants. One of the things that they found is they looked at people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and they said those people had a significant amount of higher thyroid stimulating, or TSH, than the people without non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And they said that this difference was actually clinically significant. And so they said, as you see a progression of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you also would see a corresponding increase in thyroid stimulating hormones. Now, one of the things, though, of what they said is they said that a thyroid issue is causing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I say, it's and it can be, but it's kind of like saying, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's like, well, it could actually be both. And if you are develop a non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, then you're going to develop a corresponding thyroid problem. But also, if you develop a thyroid problem, and this could be largely due to autoimmunity, then yes, you can also develop non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the reason why is because thyroid hormone is actually what sets the tone for metabolism in the liver cells. So that's why if someone comes in and their triglycerides, for example, are super elevated, then sometimes, and it doesn't make a lot of sense, then I'll say you probably might need to check your thyroid. And sometimes they do, in fact, have a thyroid issue as well. So this actually is a study that shows the liver's role in the thyroid. How about a toxicity issues? So this actually comes from Helio News. They kind of bring out the new and most current studies. So this comes from June 16, 2023. So just a month ago, combined exposure to environmental toxins associated with hypothyroidism. And they talked about dioxins. So dioxins are toxic chemicals created during industrial processes, often in improper trash incineration and the production of herbicides and pesticides. These compounds accumulate and persist in the food chain. People are exposed primarily through food sources and animal products. So the exposure of dioxins that are largely actually coming from our food supply, from our food chain. Here's another one. Exposure to environmental chemicals may alter thyroid function for reproductive aged women. So here's what they said. Women exposed to higher concentrations of BPA or bisphenol A have lower levels of free and total T3. And exposure to higher amounts of all chemicals in the study was also linked to lower free T3. So could the actual chemicals be causing an issue with the conversion of its inactive to its active form? So one of the things they found is women with higher urinary levels of bisphenol A had lower concentrations of free T3 and total T3. Women with higher levels of urine and women with higher levels of urinary triclosan had increased free T3 levels. That's interesting. So if you look at BPA, this is in plastics. This is in food storage containers, especially when you're doing takeout. This is also on the credit card paper, which is why you feel it kind of oily or it kind of smooth, slick. That is, considered BPA. So, and then also triclosan, which is going to be in some like hand sanitizers. And I know that the FDA banned it within like soaps and shampoos, but it was there as well. But it's still in hand sanitizers, which means I wonder how many thyroid problems were produced because people were using hand sanitizer over the last 3 years ad nauseum, trying to run away from a virus that would not hurt you if you had a healthy immune system. Okay. So, but that's for another time. Effect of obesity and starvation on thyroid hormone, growth hormone, and cortisol secretion. So here's the interesting thing of what they said. This comes from about a year ago, a little over a year ago. Obesity and starvation have opposing effects on normal physiology and are associated with adaptive changes in hormone secretion. Although hypothyroidism is associated with some weight gain, because everyone says I have hypothyroidism and I'm gaining weight, surveys of obese individuals show that less than 10% are considered hypothyroid. So a lot of times when they say, oh, well, I'm overweight because I have hypothyroidism, that's not 100% the case. Although when they say only 10% have hypothyroidism, they probably aren't testing the way that they're in fact supposed to. So when you look at this, what they're saying from this research article is they're saying, yeah, obesity, like hypothyroid is not causing morbid obesity. Does it have an effect on metabolism? Yes, in fact, that it does. But the real thing that I want to talk about when it comes to this article is actually starvation, or having an eating disorder, or not eating enough. So what they say is states of chronic starvation, such as seen as in anorexia nervosa, are also associated with changes in thyroid hormones and also in cortisol secretion. There's a decrease in total and free T4 and also in T3, but there's also an increase in what's known as reverse T3 in similar findings in sick euthyroid syndrome. Okay. So sometimes when you're not even eating enough, it's why you will see an elevation of reverse T3. You will see a decrease in T3, and it's not has nothing really to do with your thyroid. It's a response of your thyroid as a response to you not eating as well, because you don't eat as well, your cortisol levels go way high. The body goes into a stress state. So anything that can cause a stress state, this can be a bear chasing you, either real or perceived, or in another case too, what will dramatically increase cortisol levels, which will put the body in a state of stress, is actually under eating. And in this case, this is a severe case of under eating, in which you would diagnose as an eating disorder called anorexia nervosa. Okay. So association between thyroid function and cortisol in cortisol producing adenoma patients. The reason why I talk about this is to show you how cortisol plays an effect with your thyroid. So cortisol is the stress hormone, and it's going to increase when blood sugars are low, to sort of try to mobilize sugars in order to maintain your blood sugar levels. And it's also a hormone that is secreted during times of stress. Well, in this article, from about 3 years ago, they actually looked at people who had a cortisol producing adenoma. And so when it was producing cortisol, they said, okay, well, if it's going to produce cortisol, cortisol is going to be very high. And what happens to the thyroid in these people who have very, very high levels of the stress hormone cortisol? So thyroid dysfunction has been reported in hypercortisolism, meaning having a high amount of cortisol. But basically what they said is the study was aimed to investigate the association between thyroid function and excessive cortisol secretion in patients with cortisol-producing adenoma, to explore changes in pituitary function after they actually removed the adrenal glands and the adenoma, which was producing that tumor. So some of the results that they found is that serum thyroid stimulating hormone and free T4 levels were significantly lower in the adenoma group. So when they had a cortisol producing adenoma, they had a significantly lower levels of T4, which means output started to go down. And they even adjusted it for body mass index and age. So it wasn't just clear across the board. So furthermore, decreased TSH levels were corrected by an adrenalectomy. So by removing the adrenal glands, and they found that when they removed the adrenal gland that had the tumor on it, that they saw a recovery in their T4 levels after that. And the reason why is because they drastically reduced their cortisol. So this is why, and we're not talking about people who have an adrenal tumor, but we're all talking about is that stress or anything that is cortisol producing can cause a change within the thyroid gland. So here's an interesting case, and we actually just did these results not too long ago, but you actually see this is a woman who came in who started off on 75 micrograms of thyroid medication. And you can see if you look all the way over to the right, you can see that even despite being on that medication, you can see that even her TSH was still very high. So you can see over the course of about 6 months is that her TSH went extremely low. So it went extremely low, and you can see that her thyroid levels were starting to go up. Well, I started talking to her about it. You may need to start to decrease your dosage, talk to your doctor. So they reduced the dosage by about 33%. And then we retested it again. And you can still see that her levels are actually, her thyroid levels were even higher. Now, you also notice that she has thyroid peroxidase antibodies. So she does have Hashimoto's. We didn't know how much thyroid destruction was taking place. And then we even looked at it again, even after lowering the dose, and you can see that her TSH was actually not even registering. And you can see that her T4 or T3 levels were very, very high as well. And so I said, well, you need to show this to your doctor, and hopefully they'll be able to adjust your dosage. And she took it back to the doctor, and the doctor said, I'm going to get you off of this, all hormones, and we're going to take you off of thyroid medication. And so the doctor actually did that. I can't actually do it, but I can give you direction as far as if you should be talking to your doctor as well. And I've even had a lot of people who've come in who were like, I want all natural and I want all natural. And I'm like, listen, there are cases where you need fire department care. And this is one of the cases. And so I have no problems referring people to a medical doctor if they need the fire department, but I don't get that many medical doctors referring over for restorative care. But here's the cool thing: over the course of about 1 year, she went from 75 micrograms all the way down to 0 and not needing her thyroid medication. Do you think that she was happy about that? The answer is yes. She is happy about that. And also, when we started correcting this, we weren't focused on her thyroid. We were focused on all the things that were affecting her thyroid. And that's the reason why the thyroid was restored. And the reason why is because it rarely is a thyroid issue. The thyroid is responding. The thyroid's not causing, but the thyroid is responding. So hopefully, guys, that makes sense to you. And hopefully that inspires you to start looking deeper. And hopefully you change your mind up here so that you're not trying to pound a square peg into a round hole, and that you understand, hey, maybe I need to change approaches here. Maybe I need to work with a different doctor who will order the right amount of tests, who will work with my lifestyle in order to provide restoration and not just fire department care. See, most people, what they do is they only spend their whole life getting fire department care. And everybody says, yeah, but we're living longer than ever before. I'm like, yeah, we are. We're living longer than ever before. We're also living sicker longer than ever before. We're also living miserable longer than ever before. And there's a difference between breathing and there's a difference between living. And most people are just breathing and they're existing and they feel miserable during this whole process. I'm like, guys, you have one life to live. Why not feel amazing throughout that process? Why not feel amazing? Why not feel awesome? Why not have abundant energy? Why not live your life to the fullest? But you need to be restored and you need to stop being manipulated. There's a difference between the two. So guys, one final call for our Man Up Challenge that's coming up in person Saturday, July 22nd at 10 o'clock a.m. If you are from the Chicagoland area and you're a man, or you want your man to come, please make sure you show them this, show them the website link, get them registered for it. It is free to attend. We'll talk about the 4-week plan during that time. We have a lot of things planned for that 4 weeks, things that I will do for men, but not for women, including, oh boy, I don't know if we should even say this, doing a 3-day fast, doing very hard, intense workouts, also doing intermittent fasting, actually eating in a way of restricting sugars. And then also we have a couple of surprises, like some really awful hill runs and also doing cold plunges and things like that. I guarantee when they stick to that, they will become a different man. They'll become a man that you married and not necessarily the man that's at right now, that's sitting on the couch and watching sports and just not being active the way that he's supposed to. And you also can join us if you're not from the Chicagoland area. Join us on the webinar on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday morning. You can see the times to register for that. And then when you watch that webinar at the end, it will give you a link and that you can join our Facebook group and you can be able to follow us virtually as well. So help me on Synthroid. I don't feel well. Hopefully the big thing that you got from us is start to look deeper. Work with the Wellness Way doctor. It's not about the supplements that you need to be on. It's about, first and foremost, getting the right testing, figuring out why and where the issue is happening, and start correcting the lifestyle. It starts with inflammation first and foremost. So work on that, restore sufficiencies, and then restore why things aren't converting the way that they're supposed to, and then start to work from there. Lower inflammation, and then start to rebuild the body and start to restore the body after that. It doesn't happen overnight, but remember, the body was created to be well. It wasn't created to get sick. It's created to get well and to heal. And when it can't, there's too many stressors that are going on. You're forcing your body to adapt in a way to try to live as long as possible. But the end result is that you continue to get sicker and sicker and sicker. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure that you like our page, make sure you follow, make sure that you share this as well with someone who can benefit. And I'll see you guys next Monday. Give me a topic that I need to talk about because I'm at a loss right now. I'll figure it out before then. But if you have a topic you'd like to talk about that I can ramble for 40 or 45 minutes, please let me know. I would love to talk about it as well. And I always appreciate your love. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you guys like, follow, and share. And we'll see you guys next week. Be well, be blessed. And as always, remember who you are.